So yeah, I guess it's a couple minutes past, so we'll get started here. Good afternoon, everyone. My pleasure to introduce our Microsoft Partner Program Manager, Alex Laflemme, who will be co-hosting alongside myself for the Microsoft 365 Copilot webinar. We'd like to thank everyone for joining today to discuss a very exciting journey into Microsoft Copilot. Quick agenda.
I can take from here, or if you want to go through that.
No, absolutely. I mean, I was about to ask you the question. What is Microsoft 365 Copilot? And then we'll continue on through the agenda after.
I think that's a great question, actually, and not planned at all. So if we start going through the slides, we are going to try to be very focused today on one specific product, the Microsoft 365 Copilot. As a lot of you might have heard, Microsoft has gotten into the habit of renaming every new product out there and even some old products to Copilot. So it is bringing about a lot of confusion as to what's available. So again, today, Microsoft 365 Copilot, this is the paid version of Copilot available on what we call CSP. CSP being cloud solutions providers. These are your trusted advisors into the Microsoft ecosphere that help you get the right products for your company. One of them in this case is Sunco, and they're graciously hosting this webinar for you today. So on the next slide, we have a nice little graph that shows a little bit kind of behind the hood as to how Microsoft 365 Copilot works. So the first thing we have to understand is that it is not ChatGPT. Some of you may have already used that service before to varying degrees of success, but Microsoft 365 Copilot is not the same product at all. Within Microsoft 365 Copilot, there is the ability to use the same underlying technology as ChatGPT uses, what we call GPT-4 or GPT 4.5 Turbo right now that's available, but it also has access to other large language models, such as DALL-E 3, DaVinci, Codex. So depending on what type of task you are trying to accomplish with Microsoft 365 Copilot, it will leverage one of those, what they call like the LLMs, the large language models, that kind of new buzzword that everyone is using. So when they combine that technology with what a user would use, which is called a prompt, so it's kind of like a query, or if anyone's kind of old like me here, if you remember the DOS, C:/, you would actually do prompts on there, and you can actually even still load the command prompt in Windows right now. So it really is kind of like the execution, the orders, the parameters that you're giving to Microsoft 365 Copilot as you're interacting with it. The other great thing about it is that it is connected to the Microsoft Graph. So that's all of your meetings, your chats, your emails, anything on your calendar, any files on SharePoint, OneDrive that you would have there, to give what's called grounding, or if you'd like, context to those prompts. So if you were to ask Microsoft 365 Copilot, what does my week look like next week? It's going to keep its answers based on your work schedule. It's not going to talk about golfing or vacation or upcoming Oilers games or anything like that, unless you put those in your work calendar, but that's on you. The other thing that's going to be really important with it is that it is all within the Microsoft security boundary. So it's pretty much like the whole Microsoft ecosphere. So anything that you have as far as security, compliance, any type of safeguards will be respected. So this is not like going out of the Microsoft world and trying a different type of service that may expose your data, may expose company secrets. This all stays within the Microsoft ecosphere, and not even Microsoft has eyes on that data, much like Microsoft does not have eyes on any of the files that you save on SharePoint, OneDrive, and so forth. So it's a very powerful tool that's protected within the kind of Microsoft trust that you have built over the years in your environment, so you can kind of safely experiment with this without worrying that attackers are coming from outside to steal your data. And if we go on the next slide, what it is exactly, because it has finally been released for, again, what we call CSP. So it's the general market where people in SMBs and medium-sized companies can now purchase it. Prior to this, it was only available to enterprise customers. Enterprise customers had to commit 300 users minimum in order to be able to purchase this. So you may have heard this, through the weeds or in the grapevine or something like that, that you need to have a huge commitment to buy M365 Copilot. That is no longer true. As long as you have a base license, which would be Microsoft 365 Business Standard, Business Premium, E3, E5, or even on the Office 365 E3, E5 side, you have the base requirement. So then this add-on would be equivalent to $30 US per month. But the only option Microsoft has released right now is kind of like a compromise. You don't need 300 users, but for every user that you want, you will need to pay upfront for the whole year. So it is the equivalent of $488.40 per year. So it's kind of like PS4, PS5 type range of pricing. And it is worth every penny in my eye. I have it myself, and if they were to remove it from me, I would auction off any of these wonderful toys behind me before I would let go of the availability for this. The only other channel that has not yet have had access to Copilot is what's called EES CASA. So that's the big schools. So like a big provincial school or any type of the McGills, the Concordias of this world will need to wait. Well, I guess today is February 1st, so congratulations to them. They now have access to it today. I see that some questions are popping up in the chat. Sometimes we'll try to answer them throughout the discussions, but we will have a dedicated Q&A section at the end for anything that we may have missed. But it does seem that someone has already answered that question, that yes, it is already available in Canada. The January 15th release was all across North America and Europe as well. On the next slide. So the next few slides, we want to kind of introduce you a little bit as to what you can do with Copilot. We're not going to spend too much time on this because it is available, so you would be able to try it yourself. But in Outlook, this is a great tool whenever, let's say, for example, you come back from a work trip and you've missed on a few days of emails and you really want to kind of sort through all that stuff in your inbox, try to find the most important items to answer right away. Well, normally I would have taken a 2-hour block of my day coming back in to try to just go through those emails, trying to make sure I do a triage myself. But with Copilot, this was accomplished in less than 30 seconds, which is, in some good news and a bad news, right? Because then I really had to act on those emails right away. I didn't have that 2-hour buffer to try to get going. Sometimes as well, if you have a very long email thread, I deal a lot with Microsoft support, and those email threads can get really, really, really long. So trying to pinpoint, what someone said 4 or 5 replies ago, how pertinent that is. Sometimes it doesn't work, like using Control Find and all of that. Sometimes you just want a quick summary when someone forwards you an email. This is a great time saver with Copilot to help to do that. And then finally, like whenever you have a very easy reply to someone, instead of spending like 2-3 minutes typing it out, much like we don't type out our signatures, on our emails anymore, we have that kind of programmed in. With Copilot, whenever you receive an email, if it's a short one, there will be an option to just kind of use what Copilot suggests as a reply. You paste it in, and then, if you want, you can modify, add words, remove words, but hit send. So if you think, well, it's only a few seconds per email, but over the course of a day, a week, a month, definitely worth that investment for you. Next, we have Excel. This one is, and I will be 100% transparent on this. It is still a lot of the features in preview. So instead of saying that, this is the magic button that will make you an Excel expert from one day to the next, right now, I will say that the best way to use Copilot in Excel is when you kind of know what you want to do, but you just don't know how to do it. So you can actually load up the little sidebar of Copilot in Excel and ask it, how do I create a new column that has just the first names of column A, or has the sum of the sales, per month and things like that. It will really show you very, very well what you need to do. And sometimes, even kind of give you explanations as to why it would want to use that formula versus another one. But as far as the graphs that it creates itself and the tables, sometimes it's great right now, but I would still say that it's a work in progress. So if the only reason you would want M365 Copilot would be to help you with Excel, I would say to, kind of maybe experiment with it now with a lower user count. And if it accomplishes what you want it to do, then you can purchase it for everyone. But otherwise, this is something that's going to be upcoming. We all, I mean, maybe not all of us, but at least some of us remember what it was like, at the beginning of the pandemic, trying all of these new work from home technologies, sometimes with, good service, bad service, getting errors and things like that. It's a lot like that with Copilot right now. We are in a brand new world, but it is the worst version of Copilot that you will use. It's just going to keep getting better and better and getting more features, getting easier, able to do more and more. When it comes to Microsoft Word, the blank page syndrome is now a thing of the past. You start with Copilot, you write like 5, 6 words of the thing that you want to talk about. It's going to have a great draft for you up there. You're able to modify, words, sections. You can ask it to rewrite a certain section to be more precise, more funny, in the style of someone, a lot like the ChatGPT functions that a lot of people have experimented with. But it's great whenever you have, kind of that writer's block, or if you've, say, taken notes on a meeting with someone, say on OneNote or any other type of document. Well, you have them, you paste them in here, and you ask Copilot to rewrite this for you in a coherent manner. It will be great to save you some time. If you have a PowerPoint that you want to turn into a Word format, that's also a great way to do that. Same thing when it comes to PowerPoint. A lot of the features are still kind of upcoming right now. It's still something that we can't wait that it matches what we see on those videos. I would say the best use of Copilot for PowerPoint is when you can be very detailed as to what you want out of that presentation. So you can't just say, write me a 10-slide presentation on the wonders of Copilot. You're gonna get a very type of bland vanilla type of description. But since you are allowed 2,000 characters in your prompt, the more detail that you put in, the better that it will have for the results. And then if you've always wondered, how do I get those transitions, those fancy little, kind of fireworks or shades or things, a lot like with the Excel, you can ask Copilot, how do I get that, between slide 2 and 3 to move? And it will tell you how to do it. It just will not do it for you just yet. Now in Teams, for this one, this is the one that I am the most sold out on. I just cannot believe how amazing it is. If Copilot, was the full price just for the Teams functions, I would happily pay it. Most of us, including right now, have to do a lot of presentations and interactions with other customers and other people internally through Teams. And there's a lot of information that's lost with that. You could be the best note taker in the world, but if you are splitting your time between the conversation with the person and writing down notes, writing down action items, missing out on, perhaps a sentiment, that the other person you were interacting with had, like, maybe they weren't too happy with your response, but you kind of missed the nonverbal or anything like that. Well, with Copilot in Teams, you can have a great recap of whatever meeting you were in. You can ask about the action items. You can ask specific questions about, well, in that time, did Amanda say something that could be construed as aggressive? Was there anyone disruptive in this meeting? Does it seem like the customer really understood when I answered this and that? A lot about, also, how was my performance? Did I stutter a lot? Did I keep repeating the same phrase a little bit? Like, can I say it like, one of the things Copilot has told me is that I keep using, too much at the end of my sentences. So it's something that I'm actively trying to work on because of it. And if you think about it, for one meeting, that's great. But whenever you add all of those together, 1 month's worth of meeting, 6 months worth of meeting, let's say you are a manager and you have a new employee, like being invited to all of their meetings. Don't show up, don't go to those meetings with them, but after a month, like ask Copilot to review all of those meetings that this employee had. Are there any strengths, any weaknesses, any action items that weren't addressed, any kind of contentious moments? It is absolutely awesome. It is right now based on the text, but as we'll see in some of the slides, voice is starting to become included, and it will just get more and more powerful on this. For this next one, we do have a little video. It is, I would say, slightly long. It's about 4 minutes long, and I don't know how loud the sound is going to come in. So fair warning, you may need to lower your volume. But for this one, it really kind of brings all of this together, just to give you an idea of the day in the life of someone using Copilot. In this case, it's a marketer in a factory in Arizona that kind of needs to launch a new store, and time is ticking. And you will see that in these 4 minutes, they will be able to accomplish a week's worth of work, and try to kind of put yourself in those shoes as to what kind of tasks in your day-to-day job would be accomplished with these similar type of interactions with Copilot. So pretty impressive, huh? um, as we saw, there were a couple of questions, and kind of to illustrate the rapid evolution of Copilot up to today, it is absolutely necessary to turn on recordings and transcriptions in meetings in order for Copilot to work. But there has been an improvement on this, so that during your meeting, if you're meeting with some people that are very sensitive about the transcripts and things being recorded, you will be allowed to use Copilot anyway while the meeting is going on. It's just that after the meeting, since there is no transcript and no video recording, you will not be able to refer back to it. So now that we're all excited, about how much work we will no longer have to do because Copilot will do it for us, especially skipping all of those meetings that could have been an email and then asking Copilot to summarize those for you in a nice email. There are a lot of things that you need to do to prepare for M365 Copilot. It is not a plug-and-play solution unless you want some bad behaviors to occur. So as we mentioned before, as far as the external threats are concerned, the security component of Copilot follows all of the same security protocols that you already have in place. So there is no worry about external users, external bad actors trying to have access to your data because you've enabled Copilot. However, on the inside, and some of you might already experienced this with different AI tools or different anecdotes with other peers, you have to manage the permissions and the content. In the industry, we call this data and identity governance, because you want to make sure that the brand new employee who comes in doesn't say, hey, Copilot, find me all the HR files of everyone on the SharePoint, and to see what notes are in there, or I want to know what the salary of the big boss is, or I want to know what the future plans of the company are. I want to see what other people are saying about me. So in the past, and I mean, probably even today for a lot of you, whenever we deal with Microsoft Teams, SharePoint, Outlook, and we want to share content, it was very easy to say, anyone within my organization with the link can access this, so that you didn't have to go back later and add someone or remove someone. Unfortunately, that causes an issue with Copilot, because anyone in your organization does include Copilot. So any user with Copilot is able to find these documents and these things. So there is going to be a very important first step to lock down your data, to set up that hierarchy of permissions, set up data loss prevention type of measures, sensitivity labels, so that you have, everyone in the executive level has a certain access to data. People in the entry level have much more limited access to what they can see. So that's going to be super important to get done internally. And I do believe that in the next 6 to 8 months, we're going to see some very large companies who did not do their homework, who did not take these measures. And we're going to have some fairly embarrassing content revealed to us on the local news about so-and-so company. For security, privacy, and data residency, I've mentioned it before, but I do want to say it again, that anything that you've set up already for security, any compliance or data residency rules that you've input into place. A lot of us deal with Europe, so GDPR is active as well. It will respect those. So you don't really have to worry much about outside threat actors, as long as of course you have those security policies in place. But Copilot is not going to require you to jump through extra hoops to make sure that your environment is secure or that you are respecting data residency laws and compliance. For the license management, I think a question was fairly similar to that. So it is done in the M365 admin centers, much like all of the other add-ons. So if you ever had to add like a calling plan or a Visio or upgrade from business standard to business premium, and you're kind of familiar with the admin center, how you assign those to a user, Copilot works exactly the same way. But as we mentioned before, the user must have a valid base license. So you can't just create a user, add Copilot to that user, and have them run. They need to have one of those base licenses first, and the admin center will remind you of that whenever you try to add that service. For driving Copilot adoption, again, it seemed like one of the comments or questions related to that. There are a lot of resources from Microsoft, some of them only a week old, that allow you to see within your admin center who is ripe for adding Copilot to their usage. Yep, the Copilot dashboard is exactly what I was referring to. So you can kind of see, oh, here's all the users. Obviously this would have been for a big company, that use Teams for meetings, for chat, Outlook email. There's some documents, and you can see some of the tabs on this, the readiness, the adoption, the impact, the sentiment. So you will actually even get to see how your investment is going with the internal users, how they feel about Copilot on Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Teams, and so forth. And then you can act upon those things if you find that, oh, everyone thinks that, in Word it's just not easy to manage. So maybe a little kind of, refresher course on everyone on how to prompt in Word, how to get the better results from that would be in order. And you'll be able to kind of track that through this. And this is a tool, like this is the first version of this tool. There's going to be a lot more capabilities coming down in the pipeline. Speaking of staying, of things that are coming down the pipeline, you will want to stay up to date with the changes and announcements. There is a message reader role in the admin center that you can give to non-admin users and specifically filter to Copilot announcements. So you can do that. You can subscribe to the Microsoft blog on Copilot just to kind of see all the new features that are coming. Like I mentioned a little bit earlier, like no longer needing recordings for Teams. This is something that was just announced in the last 48 hours, but it does have an impact. Some of the things that are continuously upgrading in development, as we mentioned before. So Copilot in Teams Phone, so it will understand voice, it will understand recordings without them being transcribed. There are third-party plugins that are already available. Some of the bigger companies like Salesforce and all that have integrations with Copilot already. You can use designer integration in Word, meaning that you have a nice 300-word document. You don't know what kind of nice banner or image you would want to have on top. You can ask Copilot to create it, just from the summary, or add it, add some description yourself, like you would do with either, Stable Diffusion or Midjourney. Bing Chat Enterprise, which was renamed Copilot as a search type answer engine, is great. Copilot Lab, if you want to see how other companies are using Copilot, what kind of featured prompts they're using, whether they're in the medical field, in oil and gas, in financial, in legal, what's kind of the best practices that you can get. In Excel, you can run a whole Python marketing campaign with a Copilot. It's almost scary how automated that can get. So it just keeps getting better and better. The early adopters are the ones that are, reaping the most benefits out of that, because they don't have to learn from the ground up every time. Like they're getting used to Copilots. As soon as a new feature comes in, it's like an incremental. So I would really recommend that you jump on this, you dive in both feet first on this right now before it gets to be way too many things that you can do. some insights that we want to talk to you about, our usage of Copilot internally. I've been using it for months myself, and in AI, for AI in general. So the first one here is that for best results, work with experts. So it's a lot like, you wouldn't want to work on your hybrid or EV, car on your own, even though you have experience with gas-powered engines in the past. It's a completely different thing. Same thing with AI. It's a brand new field. It's not exactly like all of the other tools that we've had in the past. It's kind of like, mobile or anything like that. So it is important that you work with experts first to assess your current environment. Where are the holes? Do I have the right security put in place? Do I need to upgrade my license from business basic or business standard or exchange online plan 1 to business premium so I can get the most out of this? How do I get some of my data that wasn't talking to the cloud, that I didn't have any reason before to get to the cloud, that now I do? Say you're a real estate agent and you have 20 years worth of data on a on-prem server, and you never had a reason, to kind of move it to the cloud, because 2, 3 times a year you would just kind of check to see if this is a returning customer or if there's anything like that. Well, now you have all of this amazing business intelligence that you can converse with Copilot about, ideal client profiles, which neighborhoods was I great in, what kind of price range works best for me for a house with so much square feet. I mean, I don't know anything about real estate, so hopefully I'm using the right terms for that. But it is a, kind of a great, compelling reason to finally have everything on the cloud to work with AI. Identity governance policy and implement, like, we can't stress that enough. Again, this is probably going to be step one for everyone, just to make sure you have something put in place. Alternatively, one thing that we've been kind of promoting with partners and customers is that start at the top. Like, let's say you are the owner of your own business. Well, you should have access to all of the data that's on your tenant, right? So you wouldn't stumble on something that you shouldn't be able to see, like, let's say like the future plans of the company or the HR report, or of this or that. But you will be able to see the productivity gains from Copilot, how much time saving you have in Outlook, Excel, PowerPoint, and so forth. But you will also see all of that data that you have access to without being an expert on how to get to SharePoint, how to use PowerShell for command prompts and all that. So it will convince you first on the return on investment and on the policy implementations that you need to do before deploying this for the whole company. Since there is going to be potentially probably some upgrading that you need to do with your license stack, it's going to be a good time to review that technology stack. Let's say, for example, again, you're moving from business standard to business premium. Not only is it better experience and more secure experience with Copilot, but all of those security features, may actually help you in different ways, and you may be able to reduce costs in other areas because now this is kind of an overlapping service from what you have. So one thing that you will want to do is, again, to review how you're using all of these things. Make sure that you want to get your money's worth, that all of the users that you enable this on are familiar with prompting, are familiar with how to use Copilot best. There's a lot of tools out there. And then, as we saw with the Copilot dashboard and other tools, you will want to manage and monitor, how people are using it, especially if there's anything, kind of fishy going on in there. Let's say you have 10 users with Copilot, but one of them is using it 30 times as much as everybody else, and they may be going above and beyond, or maybe they're compromised, right? So you want to keep eyes on this, especially at the beginning, to make sure that everyone is easing into this brand new technology the right way. And then some final notes, about AI in general. So whether you want to use Copilot specifically or any other type of tool, these are things that you want to keep in mind, right? So is AI a silver bullet? Bit of a rhetorical question. So no, it's a lot like if you think about the car, right? The car, well, pretty soon they'll drive themselves, but the car will not have a mind of its own, will not have goals of its own, will not do magic for you, but it will get you from point A to point B a lot faster than you would be able to on your own. So AI is a lot like that. It will help you accomplish tasks that you would be able to perform yourself, but in a much quicker and much more sometimes professional manner. Let's say you're not into sales all that much, and you have to review a contract for with an end customer. Well, you could spend hours, scouring the web for examples and build something pretty decent, or get Copilot to do that for you much faster. So again, it's not something that you couldn't do on your own, but it's something that will be a lot faster. These technologies are brand new. They will need frequent updates. All the integration between different parties, they will potentially break. We do remember, again, like whenever iPhone came out, the App Store, Microsoft Office was not available on it. A lot of people said it would never be available on it because Apple and Microsoft never talk to each other. Nowadays, you just type in Office on the App Store and you have like 5 different options of things you can download and use it within minutes. The data for any AI needs to be trained. That's going to be important to have everything on the cloud talking to each other. When it's the Microsoft ecosphere, we're talking about SharePoint, OneDrive, Outlook. But if you don't have your documents on this, let's say all of your meetings right now are through Zoom or Slack or Facebook Messenger or something, Copilot is not going to have access to those transcripts, to that insights. So it's going to be important to consolidate those services onto what you want to use as a technology. Also, this one is slightly less obvious, but since everyone is cost conscious nowadays, as you can see, even with Copilot, let's say you have Business Basic or you are on even Business Standard, you will likely want to upgrade to Business Premium or something else for more security and more features to be able to leverage the full power of Copilot. If you have multiple technologies from different providers, the same will likely be true. If you're using 6 different providers, you're looking at probably 6 upgrades. Those costs can add up quite fast. So it will be a good idea to consolidate those services, kind of pick a winner, pick one technology that you want to use along with AI to reduce those costs and kind of reduce your exposure to potential, kind of weaknesses, hacks, 0 days, bad actors, your sister's boyfriend's nephew might be a whiz kid in AI, and his brand new app that he put on the App Store is super amazing, but you don't know what kind of backdoors may be in there. All of those AI technologies have what's called, a big bilateral type of communication with, with the web, with other parties. So things can go bad very, very fast. So nowadays, anything that could have taken a month to exfiltrate data from your company because attackers didn't know exactly where to look, or they had to do kind of trial and error and all of that. Well, if they compromise your user that has access to an AI bot, they can pretty much take everything almost right away. So what we are saying as a last thing is to proceed with caution. This is brand new. Make sure that the things that you are using right now are the official services. Start using Bing Chat, which has been rebranded Copilot. You will see that message, that little green banner with the little shield that says your commercial data is protected. Make sure you have those policies in place internally, whether or not you want to use M365 Copilot, but just in general, because AI is going to be part of our future, much like cell phones are part of our present day, much like the computer mouse is part of our present day. But all these things were brand new at one time, and it was a kind of uncertain future. I think, Sean, you've been really, really good at answering a lot of the questions. I kind of had, I did that myself as best I could. Are there any outstanding questions that we did not get to, or anything that you want to ask?
Oh, I think people are chiming in with regards to the efficiencies and I mean, my personal opinion on Copilot is a game changer for pretty well every application within the Microsoft environment. I've loved it since I started using it. I don't think I could go back personally. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. But.
Oh yeah, no. Again, like take my left foot first. It's just I want, I need this to work. It just, whenever I've been in a situation where I didn't have access to Copilot at Teams, it really felt like, I was missing something, like I was kind of driving blind. I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to remember this conversation. I can't just have a note taker, a very, very good note taker that's going to provide me with some insights on there. It's like, no, I don't want to do that. It's much like, think of going on the road and not having your GPS anymore. Even though, 10, 15 years ago, you were a really good map reader. You had in your glove box like the three most important maps, you had some routes taken, you knew how to navigate north, south, and everything. Today, try that. Turn off your GPS, go somewhere you've never been to. You will feel just, unable to do anything. I would say the only weakness that I found with Copilot right now is, speaking of like, remembering things, is that it's a lot like the internet in the late 90s, where sometimes during business hours it is hard to get that service. Like the capacity is a bit of an issue. And then things that I can ask Copilot at night or during the morning, that easily answers. I will get answers like, oh, an error occurred right now, or oh, I can't work on this right now, or I can't do this yet. And it's like, well, you did it yesterday, and all. This is something that is very temporary. Microsoft is ramping up their capacity at breakneck speed. They've bought companies, they've bought servers, they have their own AI chip that they're building. They've renewed their commitment with NVIDIA. They've started a new partnership with AMD. So these are all things that are very temporary, but would be, frustrating at the moment because, you're kind of used to working with Copilot and spending very little time doing those tasks. So whenever you hit that roadblock, it is like, all right, it's not working right now. But if you wait a little bit, it will work later. And if you remember, I mean, hopefully you don't remember it like with bad memories, but at the beginning of the pandemic, when everyone was moved onto Teams because everyone had to work from home 100% of the time, there were some capacity issues. There were some server issues. There were even like some announcements from Microsoft saying, hey, you may not have access to all of the features and all of the services right now because we really are struggling keeping up with capacity. So this is not because of a emergency or a pandemic, but it really is because of the interest that everyone has in Copilot and all these AI tools, that those servers are highly solicited right now. But again, it is something very temporary that should be resolved probably long before the summer.
The one question here that I don't know the answer to because I don't use Microsoft Visual Studio is there an integration to Copilot with Visual Studio?
With Visual Studio itself, not just yet, but there is Copilot for GitHub. So any type of developer or programmer would want to start there. Apparently, like 90% of devs and programmers that use GitHub use Copilot for GitHub now and wouldn't be able to live without it. So I would start there. Eventually, functions will come to the Azure side of things. So it will likely not be Copilot for Visual Studio, but it will be Copilot for Azure, and Visual Studio will be included in that stack. But right now, there's nothing super specific on that other than for GitHub.
Appreciate that. Did we have any? I think I've covered all the questions in the meeting chat. Does anybody else have anything else?
Can you translate text or audio from a different meeting? Well, that's a great question, actually. One thing that Copilot does is that it is fluent in 19 different languages right now. But whenever you want in the middle of a conversation to switch from one language to another, and in Quebec, we're especially victims to that, switching French to English, sometimes in the middle of the same sentence, that does have limitations right now. It does confuse Copilot very much. But if you have, after the meeting, a transcript, you don't even actually need to use Copilot itself for that. You can use Microsoft Word. The translation tool is actually really, really good. So you copy the transcript from your conversation in one language, paste it in Word, and ask the tool to translate it for you into whatever language you want, and you will see that it's actually very powerful. There's only some very rare like colloquialisms or expressions that it will kind of struggle to translate. But I will say it gets you there like 90% of the way.
Fantastic. Thank you.
I think we're a little bit over time, but everyone stayed the whole time.
No, this was fantastic. I really appreciate you joining the co-hosting the webinar today, Alex. I think you brought a wealth of knowledge to everybody that was attending. And yeah, if anybody has any questions along the way, please don't hesitate to reach out to our team. We're here to assist and help with the Copilot experience.
Yeah, it's such a fun topic. It's when I say it was my pleasure, like it's not a lie, not even close to a lie. I just love talking about this stuff. I love, like, even during this presentation, I started to think about a couple of other things that I could start doing with Copilot. So it's just a very exciting time. This brand new technology, just opens up so many horizons on things that we can do. Like you mentioned, a true game changer. And in this world of very negative news and things like that going on, it's fun to have this one safe haven where everything is positive, everything is looking up and growing, and that's where I like to spend my time.
100%. Yeah, no, this is great. I see lots of thank yous in the chat here as well. So we'll see how 365 goes with Copilot next 3 to 6 months. We might have to do an update on this webinar come the end of summertime, because the changes are, like Alex alluded to on the webinar, changing almost daily. So
almost daily. Yep.
So what it's going to look like in 6 months, I think it'll be great for everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your afternoon.